Let's wrap the tutorial for this section up by giving some tips on what you should be doing for your project and explaining a little bit more about what you're getting yourself into in this. So the real core behind what I want you to be doing here is to be using our web scraping tools and abilities. Now I've kind of replaced a lot of the content from the tutorial here with other stuff, but make sure you have some functionality from that earlier tutorial. Go back to it if you need it again. But we're going to be scraping a number of websites, I think 4 or 5 or more, for their information, and then presenting it in a way that is curated for the type of content that you're getting. So maybe it's stats organized in different categories. Maybe it's text kind of aligning with different times that you pull the data from the web, or maybe it's written to files, one file for news headlines, one file for data, one file for miscellaneous things that you're looking up, or maybe you put everything in a single file in a way that's really curated with concatenating strings together with different types of delimiters potentially. But one of the things I want to kind of go over here is that you need to be creating an interactive menu for this program. And in this menu, you should be looping like normal and caching exceptions like normal, but maybe in it, you give the user some options. The first option might be a scrape for hockey stats. Maybe that's the first website that you interact with. And I, as the user, can just press 1 to get right now, what are the most recent stats on those players or whatever sport you want to focus on. Maybe a second option is a scrape for, I don't know, maybe you want to look up crypto prices. Maybe there's a third option to scrape for news headlines. I like that one, apparently. Maybe there's another option to scrape for most recent tweets from Elon Musk. Something like that. Maybe you want to just keep up to date with what your favorite celebrity is saying or your favorite streamer is posting on a social media platform. Although be careful of ones you have to sign into. That's a little bit maybe more tricky than we can manage right now. But we want to be able to choose what to scrape from and when. But we also want an option to turn on auto scraping and turn off auto scraping, which is going to set a process of making all these things happen in an automated way based on some timer. You might even want to have sub menus in each of these, with the idea being that like just print out data to console, or maybe you actually want to save this data to a file. Maybe you want to provide the user options for kind of how they want to interact with that data. They want it to be persistent, they want this to be temporary, just for curiosity. There's some really cool things you can do in the main kind of runner menu system of this program to get these systems interacting. Although the last thing I want to talk about right now is thinking about how we actually want to manage all this logic, because there has to be a certain order that things are done. For example, it would be a little bit silly to write to a file information that's not up to date. So you probably don't want the file to be writing independently of the scraping. Once a scrape has been done, then write the updated information to a file. And probably only do it once. You don't need the information written a whole bunch of times. However, the processing of the string data from the scraper should probably be done before you write, because if you scrape and then write and then process, well, the written data will be in probably a disorganized, unintuitive format that you write before you process it. So really, once the user chooses to scrape for data, it needs to scrape, pull the data in, then process the strings to organize them in the way that you like, and then write the data to the file. And the timer test, or the timer itself, sorry, I'm just reading the class name. The timer itself should initiate this process happening in an automated way for multiple things, so that 4 different, or maybe 5 or 6 different websites all scrape, then get processed, then are written to a file, potentially all interacting in some way. Maybe you want all 4 of these to report to a single common source, with your content being organized. Stats are listed first, and then a tab over, there's some prices, and then on the next line, there's some headlines, and then on a next line, indented a little bit, is the most recent tweet, just to make it look kind of distinct, the different types of content. So you can kind of gather all this data and then process it all together into a master report, and then you write it out. You could write the information to a single file, or you can have a separate file, one for each of the categories, or maybe you have some better idea for how you want to organize the outputs that makes sense to you. Ultimately, try to make this information interesting and useful for yourself, try to make a web scraping bot is kind of what we're doing with this section here, that actually gathers information that you're curious about, that might actually save you some time in life, or that might actually kind of curate data for you in a way that you might want to work with later on, or simply just find a curiosity to see what it is that you can notice in trends of information, or how efficient you can be saving yourself your own web searching time and whatnot. So lots of cool things to do. There's more instructions in the project handout for the specifics of this, but enjoy it, have fun with it, and good luck scraping the web.